First class isn't for you. The words sliced through the air like a whip as Rachel Brooks, Skywing Airline's lead flight attendant, tore the boarding pass from Nia Thompson's hand with deliberate contempt. Her smirk deepened as a neatly dressed white woman behind her, Margaret Pierce, let out a laugh sharp enough to turn heads. The first-class cabin, pristine and bathed in artificial calm, turned cold. Nia, 38, stood motionless for a beat. Her charcoal travel set, sleek joggers, a tailored hoodie, clean sneakers, might have looked too casual for the luxury seats, but the platinum digital pass glowing on her phone had no such doubts. Rachel blocked her path with the kind of disdain born from a memory. They had met before, at a Skywing corporate summit 2 years earlier where Nia, as a keynote speaker under a pseudonym, criticized the airline's outdated service protocols. Rachel hadn't forgotten, nor forgiven. "This is first class," she said louder now, her tone coated in mock concern. "You're probably confused. Economy's that way." Nia's eyes locked with hers, calm but steely. "My seat is 2C. She raised her phone, but Rachel, smiling without warmth, tapped her crew device. The digital check-in vanished. "Glitch. Clearly," she said, tilting her head around them. Murmurs bloomed. A man in a business suit snickered. Margaret pushed forward, dramatically fanning herself. "I need that aisle seat for work," she said, brushing Nia's shoulder like clearing dust. "Do you even belong here?" Nia didn't flinch. She had been here before. Not this flight, but this moment. She heard it in the lecture halls where professors dismissed her code as ambitious. She heard it in boardrooms where white men smiled thinly and said, "Maybe next time." Those echoes never left. They sharpened her. They built Nexus Tech. Rachel leaned in, whispering just loud enough. "She's out of place here," she said to Margaret, who didn't bother whispering back, "Did she scam that ticket?" Rachel straightened, her voice now theatrical. "Ma'am, you're causing a disturbance. I'll have to ask you to return to your assigned seat." "This is my seat," Nia replied evenly, projecting without raising her voice. "FAA regulations require." Rachel cut her off. "Rights? In my cabin?" Passengers chuckled. The atmosphere shifted. This wasn't a disagreement. It was a performance, and Rachel was directing the scene. Near the rear of first class, Jamal Carter, a 22-year-old in glasses and a denim jacket, subtly raised his phone. Next to him, Maya Evans, a poised woman with a journalist's instinct, began scribbling in her notebook. Across the aisle, Liam Patel, a calm law student flipping through a paperback, quietly muttered something about federal discrimination statutes. But the most crucial gaze came from seat 1B. Sophia Ramirez, blending in under an oversized sweater, watched everything. Her hand briefly touched the wire of a discreet earpiece. She was compliance, not just sky wings, but real compliance. She had orders to observe this flight, and now she had her moment. Nia tapped the rim of her smart ring with her thumb. It was subtle. No lights, no sound. Just one signal pulsing from her skin into the microcircuitry woven into her hoodie. Sophia caught it. A blink. Then she shifted in her seat, adjusting the dial on her watch as if fidgeting. In truth, she was sending encrypted packets through a secondary network, a failsafe designed by Nexus Tech to alert their shadow team in emergencies. Nia didn't break eye contact with Rachel. "Plan B now." The signal read, but she wasn't the only one watching. Near the beverage cart, Ethan Caldwell, Skywing's onboard tech supervisor, narrowed his eyes. He knew who Nia was, even if Rachel didn't, and he didn't like the idea of being watched. "She's up to something," he muttered, stepping toward Rachel and nodding toward the ring. Rachel grinned. "Oh, I know." With a final sneer, She looked Nia up and down. "You'll pay for this." Nia smiled back, not with fear, but with a quiet promise. "Yes," she said. "Someone will." To the average flyer. It was a tense moment in a high-priced cabin, but for Nia, it was a familiar battlefield. She had grown up with doors closing in her face, rejections wrapped in praise. People like Rachel, people who didn't just doubt her, but needed her to fail to feel right. But she'd outlived all of them. She coded past them, out-earned them, and now, she was the architect of the very tech Sky Wing systems ran on. The ring wasn't for show. It was a trigger. Not for revenge, but for change. Around her. Whispers turned into ripples of discomfort. People sensed something was off, but they didn't know what. Not yet. Rachel's prejudice had awakened more than outrage. It had sparked a cabin uprising, and this flight hadn't even left the ground. Before we go further, have you ever been judged for how you looked, not who you are? If that hit home, share your story in the comments. And if you believe bias has no place in our world, subscribe and follow Nia's fight. The reckoning begins now. Rachel Brooks didn't just want Nia off the plane. She wanted her erased, with calculated venom. She tapped her crew device again, eyes flashing as she summoned Daniel Walsh, Skywing's senior cabin manager, to the front of first class. Within seconds, the bulkier, graying man arrived, the kind of authority figure who didn't ask questions. He enforced comfort for those who paid for it, and peace for those who looked like him. "We have a disturbance," Rachel said, arms crossed, as if declaring war. "This passenger is refusing to comply." Nia hadn't moved. Her platinum boarding pass no longer appeared in the system, but her calm had not budged either. "I'm seated here legally," she said, voice clear, steady. "Your employee deleted my credentials mid-boarding." Daniel didn't even glance at her phone. "Remove this troublemaker," he barked. Rachel leaned in, hissing just loud enough for Nia to hear, "You challenged me once, never again." Behind her, Margaret Pierce chuckled into her champagne glass. "She's nobody," she muttered, loud enough for the nearby passengers to hear. Then Ethan Caldwell struck again, a quiet click from his tablet, and suddenly, the seat screen above Nia's head flashed. Economy assigned. Laughter rippled through the cabin. "Guess she's lost," someone murmured. "What a fraud." Another passenger said, but Nia didn't react. Not yet. Her silence was calculation. This wasn't new. Rachel's rage echoed the contempt Nia had seen a decade ago from Silicon Valley executives who once told her, "You don't have the pedigree." When she launched Nexus Tech, she'd done it alone, with code scribbled between night shifts and ideas that sounded too bold for boardrooms full of men. They called her naive. Now her algorithms ran the logistics for half of Skywing's operations, the same system Ethan was currently abusing. And Nia had receipts. She'd built in redundancies, shadows, traces that couldn't be wiped. And right now, Ethan was burying himself with every tap of his tablet, just 3 rows behind. Jamal Carter was still filming. His hands shook, not from fear, but fury. He zoomed in as Ethan reached into his pocket and slipped Rachel a small silver USB drive. She slid it into the control panel behind the service station like someone adding sugar to coffee. Routine, invisible, damning. "Passenger Thompson's record has been amended," Rachel whispered. "She's gone." Daniel nodded. "Security's en route." Maya Evans scribbled faster, then paused, raising her phone to snap a series of stills. Rachel's hand, the USB, the screen blinking false data. Across the aisle, Liam Patel's eyes narrowed. "You're manipulating passenger records," he said, standing now, his voice steady. That's a federal offense under FAA compliance law. Daniel's lip curled. Sit down. Kid, this doesn't concern you. But it did. It concerned everyone in that cabin. And Nia was about to make sure they knew it. Her thumb tapped twice on her ring. The mic activated, linking audio to her Nexus Cloud account. Rachel's next sentence was captured in crisp detail. I run this cabin. She runs her mouth. Nia's reply was calm, but surgical. And you're violating Federal Air Service protocols. I wonder how your legal team feels about that. Rachel laughed. You think anyone cares? She asked. You're one woman. Nia gave the faintest smile. Not quite. A pulse from her smartwatch activated the mirrored feed. Behind Rachel. Jamal's device buzzed. Nia had just transferred the video directly to him. Secure, high resolution, time-stamped. Jamal uploaded it with 2 taps, labeling it Skywing deletes Black Woman's ticket mid-flight. At the same time, a soft chime echoed from the ceiling. Rachel froze. The cabin intercom crackled. Wipe her from the system, came her own voice, broadcast to every seat. Ethan's voice followed, smug and careless. No record, no seat, simple. The cabin erupted. Passengers turned. Phones were raised. Someone shouted. That's illegal, another yelled. Did she say wipe her? Daniel's face drained of color. Maggie set down her champagne glass, suddenly aware that she might be next. Nia didn't move. She leaned into her seat, adjusting her hood like it was any other day. Rachel spun toward Ethan, hissing. What did you do? He looked at the ceiling, stunned. That wasn't me, he muttered. But it was Sofia Ramirez. Still silent in 1B, had broadcast the hacked audio from the internal announcement channel. It had been easy. She was wearing the key, a Nexus Tech bracelet synced to a secure server Nia had seeded months earlier. Insurance in case Skywing ever tried to pull something like this. And now the cabin was a minefield of evidence. Passengers began demanding answers. Is this how you treat all black passengers? Someone yelled. That woman paid for first class. Rachel, panicked, turned to Daniel. Fix it! But Daniel was paralyzed. The control panel buzzed with error codes. Ethan tried accessing the system again, but his screen blinked red. Access denied. It read, from Sophia's seat. A quiet message pulsed out. Contingency activated. Nia leaned toward Jamal. Keep recording, she whispered. He nodded. They're done, he said. This was no longer about one seat. It was about something far deeper. For Nia. This wasn't just retaliation. It was exposure. A display of how bias hides beneath uniforms and policies, how tech can either be weaponized or redeemed. She had watched Rachel lie with her whole chest, in public, on camera, with allies, because she thought no one would stop her. But now the system was eating itself alive in real time. She didn't need to yell. She didn't need to beg. She had outbuilt them. She had outplayed them. And in less than 10 minutes, she'd make sure the world saw it. Rachel Brooks was unraveling. But she wasn't done yet. Her fury had slipped past strategy into something personal, something reckless. Enough, she barked, her voice sharp and brittle, as if she could still command respect through volume. She stormed down the aisle toward Nia, who sat calm and centered in seat 2C, surrounded now by a buzz of cell phones, murmurs, and disbelief. Get up, Rachel snapped, yanking Nia's carry-on from the overhead bin and letting it crash to the cabin floor. You're done, gasps broke out. Nia didn't flinch. She watched Rachel as if memorizing the collapse of a monument. Daniel appeared again, flushed and sweating. You are banned for life, he growled, pointing at Nia like a judge with a gavel. Ethan stood at the back, silently locking Nia's seat controls remotely. The chair stiffened under her. Lights above her head flickered. Margaret Pierce, still nestled in her seat with an untouched mimosa, smirked. "I always knew this class wasn't for everyone," she sneered. The first-class cabin, once quiet and polished, had turned into an arena. Half the passengers sat in stunned silence. The other half had phones out, recording everything. Rachel motioned toward the rear of the plane. "Security will escort you. Walk or be dragged." And then, almost like prophecy, 2 airport security guards appeared at the curtain, called in under the guise of a disruptive passenger. As they approached, Nia stood slowly, her hands raised. "I'm not resisting," she said, locking eyes with Rachel. "I'm recording." This was the kind of moment her past had prepared her for. The boardrooms where she'd been interrupted mid-sentence. The tech conferences where moderators forgot to call on her. The interviews where the compliment always came with a condition. "You're impressive for a black woman." All those cuts had sharpened her resolve. Nexus Tech wasn't just a success story, it was her armor. But today wasn't about boardrooms. This was street-level humiliation in a $3,000 seat, and Rachel was wielding it like a club. As the guards reached for her elbow, Nia slid a small micro-USB from her pocket into Jamal Carter's hand without a word. "You'll know what to do," she whispered. Jamal nodded once. That USB contained encrypted footage, audio logs, and transaction records. Every interaction from the moment she boarded, Nia had built it for a day just like this. Back in 4D, Maya Evans had stopped writing. She was now live streaming. "This is happening right now aboard Skywing Flight 237, she whispered to her viewers, thousands of whom were tuning in by the second. "This woman, a paying first-class passenger, is being ejected for no reason other than racial bias and internal fraud." Beside her, Liam Patel stood, holding open a printed PDF of passenger rights from the DOT website. "According to federal law, this is unlawful removal without a cause tied to safety or behavior," he told the guard, who ignored him. "She hasn't raised her voice once," someone shouted. "This is disgusting," another said. Nia was halfway down the aisle now, escorted like a criminal. Her bag dragged behind her. Phones captured every step. Ethan tried to hide, but the camera lens found him. Rachel followed close, triumphant. "Good riddance," she hissed. But Nia didn't look back. She didn't need to. Jamal was already uploading. As she reached the cabin door, her phone buzzed. A message from Sophia. "Package sent. It's viral." She turned, paused just outside the threshold, and looked back at Rachel. "Check your notifications," she said calmly. Rachel's smirk faltered. The first ripple came from the man in 1A, whose phone dinged audibly, then 1C, then Liam's, then Maya's. Within seconds, a flood of phones lit up across the cabin. Hashtag Skywing Scandal flashed across screens. Jamal's upload, clipped, captioned, tagged, had taken off. "Skywing deletes black woman's ticket mid-flight," read the title. 10 million views in under 6 minutes. The algorithm was feasting. Comments surged in real time. "This is racism in 4K. One read, "I just canceled my Skywing booking," said another. "Who is she? Give her a crown." News outlets tagged the post. Maya's live stream was now mirrored on 4 major platforms. Sophia's data packet, sent to 3 journalists and a consumer rights advocate, contained time-stamped security footage, Rachel's intercom confession, Ethan's system access logs, and Daniel's ejection order. It was airtight. At the front of the cabin, Rachel's phone pinged again, then again. Her screen was flooded with mentions. Her name was trending, and not for the right reasons. Daniel's phone buzzed. Ethan's tablet blinked and froze. Someone shouted, "Hey, she's famous!" Another passenger turned to Maya. "Is she suing?" Maya replied. "If she does, they're done." Rachel, shaken, turned to Daniel. "We need to shut this down," Daniel stammered. We don't have the authority." Ethan tried to access the internal cabin server. The screen blinked. Error. Locked by external admin. He turned pale. "We've lost control." Rachel glared at him. "Fix it," she barked, but it was too late. Every second was a headline now. Nia's quiet exit had become a declaration. The humiliation she endured was now public domain. She didn't shout. She didn't rage. She let them do it themselves. And now millions were watching the price. Outside the cabin, Nia waited at the boarding bridge, still within view of the cabin. She checked her phone again. Another message from Sophia. "Security override ready?" She smiled softly. "Your turn, Rachel." The scandal wasn't just viral. It was structural now. Skywing's bookings plummeted in real time as flight searches began redirecting away from their site. Investors were tagging each other. Travel watchdogs were making calls. News anchors were requesting interviews with the woman in seat 2C. And Rachel? Rachel was still standing in the aisle, the attention of the nation falling squarely on her. And she had no clue how many more receipts Nia had waiting. The cabin was boiling over, just 12 minutes into the flight delay, and the air inside Skywing's first-class section felt thinner, heavier, as though justice had begun sucking the oxygen away from the very people who had weaponized luxury against one woman. #Skywing scandal had surged past 30 million views. Nia Thompson hadn't raised her voice once, yet her story roared from every phone, tablet, and terminal across the airport. The energy on board shifted. Passengers no longer passive observers but furious amplifiers. "You gonna explain this to us?" someone demanded as Rachel paced in tight circles, eyes darting from phone to crew to Ethan. "She was calm the whole time," another voice shouted. "We saw what you did." Rachel tried to retake control, voice fraying. This was a misunderstanding," she sputtered, motioning toward Daniel Walsh, who looked as if he'd aged a decade in the last 5 minutes. His shirt clung with sweat. He raised both hands in defense, trembling. "It's being investigated," he stammered. "We're working on it." But the truth was, they had lost the plot. Their cabin was no longer a premium lounge in the sky. It was a courtroom, and the jury was filming. The evidence was live, public, and damning. Margaret Pierce, still sipping what had become a very inconvenient mimosa, rolled her eyes. "You're all overreacting. That woman probably forged her ticket. Or worse, staged this." But even her words lacked conviction now. Passengers turned toward her with narrowed eyes and raised eyebrows. She was the kind of person who had always gotten her way with nothing but posture and tone. But today, that armor was cracking. "You were fine until she sat beside you," Liam Patel said firmly, rising to his feet again. "You treated her like furniture. Now you want sympathy?" Margaret scoffed, but offered no rebuttal. Beside her, Ethan Caldwell frantically scrolled through his tablet, trying to override the system from a secondary access point, but the interface flashed red again and again. System access denied. External lock initiated. He cursed under his breath. "It's her," he muttered. "She's done something." Back in the forward row, Maya Evans had published her article. "Bias at 3,000 feet. How one woman's humiliation exposed Skywing's rot." Within seconds, major outlets were sharing it. Influencers, CEOs, even politicians were retweeting the scandal, calling for boycotts, investigations, and firings. Sophia Ramirez, quiet until now, slid a small tablet from her seat-back pocket and connected to the cabin network through an administrative shell. The screen lit up in dark mode. Access, NexusCom. She typed a simple message. "Prepare to execute contingency." Then she stood. All eyes tracked her as she walked calmly down the aisle toward the galley. Passengers shifted, curious. Daniel flinched. "You! Who are you?" he stammered. Sophia gave him a cold glance. "I'm someone who doesn't answer to you," Rachel barked. "Get back to your seat, ma'am." Sophia ignored her and opened the cockpit service door. A private space, normally used for in-flight prep, was about to become a war room. Meanwhile, Nia stood outside the cabin, still just beyond the threshold. She was technically off the plane but hadn't gone far, refusing to walk away from what was hers. She tapped her phone, opened a secure Nexus Tech channel, and typed one sentence: "Bring up the leverage logs." A moment later, Sophia's screen flickered. Every interaction, from Rachel's racial remarks to Ethan's data tampering and Daniel's complicity, was archived, time-stamped, and ready to broadcast. Cabin camera footage, intercom audio, digital deletion logs, all compiled, all authenticated. It wasn't just Naya's word against theirs anymore. It was the system against itself. Daniel's phone buzzed. An anonymous message: "Check cabin screen 4A." He turned, confused, and saw his own face pop up, frozen in a still from a minute earlier, yelling, "Remove this troublemaker!" The caption beneath read, "Skywing Senior Manager enforces illegal ejection." His heart dropped. Rachel stormed toward the front. "Who is she?" she hissed. "Who is messing with my cabin?" Nia stepped back in, uninvited, unescorted. Her ring pulsed faintly. Jamal, still seated, raised his phone again. Sophia emerged from the galley and handed Nia a different tablet. Nia tapped it once and turned the screen toward Rachel. "I have every file, every line of code, every timestamp." Rachel's eyes darted, and for a moment, she truly didn't know whether to scream or cry. "This is illegal," she shouted. "You hacked the airline." Nia smiled, but it was razor thin. "No," she said softly. "You broke the law. I'm just revealing it." Ethan lunged toward the tablet. Sophia stepped between them, badge flashing beneath her sweater for the first time. "Touch her again and you'll face federal charges." The very large twist was coming into view now. Nia turned to the cabin and spoke, not with rage, but with the calm of someone holding the final piece of a puzzle. "Skywing has used Nexus Tech's cabin system for 3 years. Their compliance software, crew scheduling, and biometric ID systems, all ours." She raised her hand, and Sophia cast the tablet feed onto the cabin entertainment screens. Passengers gasped. There, live on every monitor, was a dashboard showing access logs, employee profiles, and infractions. Rachel's name appeared dozens of times. Bias incidents, passenger complaints, internal warnings. Ethan's logs displayed backdoor edits, data deletions, system overrides. Daniel's were worse, signed waivers of accountability, hidden suppression files, and Maggie, her bribes to reassign passengers for comfort had been flagged 6 times. "Every system remembers," Nia said, turning back to Rachel. "Even when people forget." It wasn't just about getting her seat back. It wasn't about revenge. Nia had already won the moral battle. But now, she held the legal and technological keys to dismantle everything these people had built on bias. Rachel's voice cracked. "You're bluffing." Nia met her stare. "Then make me leave." Silence. No one moved. Daniel looked at the screens, then at Nia. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. Nia didn't answer yet. She simply turned and walked down the aisle, past every passenger, every phone, every shocked expression, toward the galley. She paused just outside, turned back, and said one word. "Ready?" Sophia nodded. "Broadcasting now." And with that, the truth took flight. Before the plane ever left the ground, The galley, once a quiet alcove for coffee prep and crew whispers, now pulsed with heat and consequence. The walls, narrow and metallic, reflected not just the fluorescent lighting but the panic creeping into the eyes of those who had controlled this flight minutes ago. Nia Thompson stood at the threshold, composed in her athleisure like a general in soft armor. She didn't need a uniform to assert authority. Her presence alone made the space shrink for those inside. Rachel Brooks was already there, back rigid, lips curled in defiance. Behind her, Daniel Walsh loomed, shifting between rage and fear, while Ethan Caldwell jabbed at a locked tablet screen that no longer obeyed him. Margaret Pierce hovered awkwardly near the cart, arms folded tight, her sense of entitlement flickering into something far less certain. "What is this?" Rachel demanded, voice shaking but sharp. "You think you can storm into the galley like you own the place?" Nia tilted her head slightly, expression calm, but her eyes, piercing, locked onto Rachel's. "Not think," she said. "No." She stepped forward, just enough to shift the air. "Here's how this works. You're going to terminate Rachel and Ethan effective immediately. You'll ban Margaret Pierce from Skywing flights, and you'll do it before we taxi, or your airline is finished." Daniel blinked, stunned. "You're threatening us?" he asked. "No," Nia said, pulling a small controller from her jacket pocket. "I'm showing you what comes next if you don't act." With a click, every cabin screen flickered back to life. Passengers gasped. The feed now showed a rotating slideshow. Rachel's internal disciplinary notes, Ethan's unauthorized system overrides, Maggie's bribe logs annotated in chilling detail. One slide bore the time-stamped quote from Rachel's earlier outburst, "First class isn't for you." Another showed Daniel approving passenger suppression overrides under discretionary escalation. The evidence wasn't just damning, it was alive, and the plane had become the courtroom. "You can't show that!" Rachel shouted, lunging forward. Sofia Ramirez stepped in instantly, hand on her shoulder, badge now fully visible. "Touch her again, and your next stop is a federal holding cell." Ethan paled. "She's with FAA?" he whispered. "Not exactly," Sofia replied, "but close enough." Margaret finally spoke, voice shaking. "This is outrageous. Do you know who I am?" Nia turned slowly to face her. "Yes. And the only reason you're not in cuffs is because I believe in structural change, not just spectacle." She raised her voice just enough to be heard in the first few rows. "But I promise you, if one more lie leaves your lips, I'll make sure every airline in the country adds your name to the blacklist tonight." Rachel's arms dropped to her sides, hands clenched into useless fists. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Who the hell are you?" Nia stepped forward again, the lighting behind her catching the Nexus ring on her finger. "Nia Thompson," she said clearly. "Founder and CEO of Nexus Tech, the platform that runs your airline's crew logistics, biometric gate access, and, until this moment, your in-cabin operations." The silence was total. Even Daniel looked as if someone had punched the breath out of his chest. You're her?" he asked, stumbling back half a step. "You run Nexus Tech?" "I own it," Nia corrected. "I built it. And I've watched this airline abuse my software to reinforce discriminatory behavior for far too long. You deleted my seat, you falsified system logs, you humiliated me in front of a cabin of witnesses, and now you're going to pay for that, not with lawsuits, but with reform." Rachel looked like she'd been slapped. "You set us up," she hissed. "This was all a trap." "No," Nia said evenly. "You set yourselves up. I just made sure someone was watching." The weight of the moment broke something loose in Daniel. "What do you want from us?" he asked, voice dry, drained. "You want Rachel gone? Fine. Ethan too. Margaret banned. Done. Just shut it off." But Nia wasn't finished. She lifted the tablet once more and played a final video. This one pre-recorded. On screen, Olivia Kim, the sharp-eyed CEO of Blue Horizon Airlines, addressed the passengers. "Skywing's in violation of several contractual obligations," she said, voice cool. "Nexus Tech is prepared to suspend service. Alternatively, we've offered to acquire majority cabin control in exchange for a full compliance overhaul. Either way, this flight ends differently than it started." The implication was clear. Nia had already arranged for Skywing's replacement, or its reformation. The takeover had been drafted days ago. All it took was the wrong employee humiliating the right woman. Daniel turned pale. "You're merging with our competitor?" Nia shook her head. "Not merging, restructuring. You'll keep your jobs. If you cooperate." She looked at Rachel one last time. "But you're done." And then, with nothing more than a nod, Nia stepped back from the galley, leaving Rachel standing under the flickering overhead light like a villain mid-exposure. Daniel picked up the crew phone and made the call. "Effective immediately," he said, his voice flat. "Brooks and Caldwell, terminated. Passenger Pierce, banned." A murmur spread through the cabin. Jamal leaned over to Maya. "She flipped the entire plane in 30 minutes, Maya whispered. "No. She rewrote the rule book." Liam stood, holding the printed FAA guidelines like scripture. "It's a new flight path now," he said aloud, and as Nia walked back to her seat, every phone turned toward her, not as an intruder, but as the pilot of a revolution she never had to shout to lead. The tension didn't evaporate after Rachel and Ethan were marched off the plane. It evolved. A new energy took hold of the first-class cabin. Passengers weren't just shocked now, they were expectant. Everyone had seen a takedown. But what came next would determine whether this was just a viral moment or something permanent. Nia Thompson stood in the aisle, not triumphant, but resolute, as she addressed the cabin with the natural authority of someone who had stopped asking for permission years ago. "What happened here today is not isolated," she began, her voice low but steady. "It's not just a bad apple. It's a system. And if all we do is fire people, the system stays the same." The cabin fell silent. Jamal lowered his phone, still recording, but now, with quiet reverence, Maya paused her typing. Liam looked up from his FAA printout. Even Daniel, standing off to the side, didn't dare interrupt. "Skywing," Nia continued, "uses Nexus Tech for in-cabin systems, and as of 5 minutes ago, I've implemented a mandatory update." She raised her wrist, tapped her smart ring, and instantly, every passenger's in-flight tablet refreshed. A new app icon appeared, Fairflight Beta. "This system," she said, "monitors crew behavior in real time. It tracks tone, ticketing anomalies, seating reassignments, and interaction patterns. Every voice command is transcribed and logged. Every passenger complaint is matched with a behavioral report." A ripple of quiet awe spread through the cabin. "And no," she added, "staff can't delete the logs." Sophia Ramirez stepped forward, now fully visible in her compliance officer badge. "Crew will undergo en-route implicit bias training," she said, her voice crisp. "Passengers will receive a prompt to evaluate every interaction, from check-in to landing. The data goes straight to a secure Nexus Tech hub, independent of airline editing." A few passengers applauded. Liam stood up again, addressing the cabin directly. "This should be federal law," he said. "This isn't just about flying, it's about dignity." Nia gave a slight nod in his direction. "We'll get there," she said. "But today, we start with this flight." Behind her, Daniel shuffled forward awkwardly. "Passengers," he said into the intercom, "we apologize for the earlier disturbance. The situation has been addressed, and we are implementing new procedures moving forward." His voice wavered. "We ask for your patience as we adapt." Jamal turned his phone toward him. "Smile," he said. "You just witnessed reform in real time." But Nia wasn't finished. She looked down at the second tablet Sophia handed her. "We weren't going to announce this until next quarter," she said. "But after today, it can't wait." She tapped the screen behind her. The in-flight monitors changed again, this time displaying the logo of a brand new app, Just Flight. "This platform," Nia explained, "will expand beyond Skywing. It's a global AI-driven watchdog for airline equity. It cross-checks seating patterns, staff infractions, reported biases, and systemic trends across multiple airlines. It provides real-time scoring for fairness on every route. If your airline starts mistreating passengers by race, age, gender, or disability, you'll know before you book." The impact landed instantly. Phones lit up. Maya's fingers flew across her keyboard. "The industry will hate this," she whispered. Jamal smiled wide. "That's how you know it's good," Liam added. "They'll have to adapt or collapse." Nia looked back once at the galley door where Rachel had last stood, then faced forward. "This started with a seat," she said. "But what we're building is a new cabin culture, accountable, transparent, and fair." The cabin broke into applause, not loud or chaotic, but steady and sincere. It wasn't just for Nia. It was for the idea that finally, someone with power had used it to protect people without it. Word of the reform moved fast. Within minutes, Delta and Blue Horizon issued public statements applauding the changes. Jetstream Airlines, trying to avoid a PR disaster of its own, requested a licensing call. Travel blogs dubbed it the Skywing Correction. But for Nia, it wasn't about press. She'd built Nexus Tech to empower invisible people, workers, customers, mothers in middle seats, disabled veterans stuck near the restrooms. This wasn't her victory, it was their relief. And still, in the corner of her mind, she knew today's headlines would become tomorrow's resistance. Systems don't go down without a fight, but at least now. She wasn't alone. She had Jamal's footage, Maya's article, Liam's advocacy, Sophia's network, and 30 million allies who'd seen the truth on their screens. That was enough to change the flight path of an industry. Rachel Brooks was gone, escorted off the aircraft not with the dignity of a senior crew member, but with the silence that follows disgrace. No applause, no resistance, just the low hum of judgment and the glow of 30 million eyes watching from their screens. A single photo of her, head down, badge removed, would go viral under the caption, "You're not welcome in first class either." Her dismissal spread across social media like a second wave, sparking corporate fallout she could neither control nor silence. Within hours, Margaret Pierce's consulting contracts were terminated. Her name blacklisted from 3 travel firms. Clients cited brand misalignment. She tweeted a shallow apology, but the comments drowned it out. Too little, too late. One said, "Apology only came when the perks vanished." As for Ethan Caldwell, his tech certifications were suspended pending federal review. He was reassigned to baggage logistics while under investigation for tampering with flight infrastructure. No access, no override privileges, just barcodes and conveyor belts, and Daniel Walsh, once confident, once untouchable, was quietly demoted to a regional training manager position in Utah. His days of riding first-class comped were over. His legacy? Reduced to a footnote in Nexus Tech's internal report titled Preventable Incidents, Case SW237. Their downfall was swift, not because of vengeance, but because the public had stopped looking away. Nia hadn't destroyed them. She'd simply let their behavior speak. But where there was judgment, there was also grace. Nia understood the cost of systemic change wasn't only in terminations, it was in transformation. So she didn't just punish, she rebuilt Fair Chance, a new Nexus Tech initiative, launched 2 days later, It offered former airline employees, especially those fired for bias-related infractions, a second shot, under conditions of accountability. The program provided digital literacy, implicit bias education, and mentorship from ethics officers like Sophia Ramirez. And who helped lead the training sessions? Jamal Carter and Liam Patel, the same young men who had stood up, recorded truth, and spoken the law when it mattered. Jamal, now a full-time content strategist at Nexus Tech, became the face of ethics in action, a short-form web series teaching young professionals how to recognize injustice in corporate systems. Liam, whose FAA citation knowledge went viral, received a full law scholarship sponsored by Nexus Tech's new Fellowship for Social Justice Advocates. Maya Evans won 2 journalism awards for her story and now ran a travel equity desk at a major publication. These weren't just witnesses. They were the next generation of watchdogs. And Skywing? It didn't collapse. It transformed, under public pressure and internal reorganization. The airline adopted NIA's Just Flight system as a permanent fixture. The once silent first-class cabin now greeted passengers with transparent service policies, real-time crew rating prompts, and public dashboards that tracked service equity in flight. The airline, once known for whispered elitism, became a case study in rapid reform. Awards followed, not for luxury, but for accountability. And as journalists wrote glowing profiles of Skywing's rebirth, every article traced it back to the woman who never raised her voice but rewired the flight path of an industry. But NIA's final act was the quietest. 1 week later, she launched Equal Skies, a global passenger advocacy app funded privately by her foundation. The app allowed flyers to report discrimination, access live legal resources, and receive support in real time from trained advocates. Equal Skies was built in the same spirit as Nexus Tech, but it wasn't about data. It was about dignity, and it started with the same words she'd heard used against her. You don't belong here. The app flipped that phrase into its mission statement. Everyone deserves to belong. Everywhere. It launched on the anniversary of her mother's passing, an educator who had once told Nia, "Don't fight to be seen. Build the place where you can't be ignored." And Nia had done just that. As she sat in seat 2C on a different flight, a quiet one heading nowhere special, she watched a flight attendant smile and greet a young black woman boarding in a wheelchair. She watched another staffer help an older Asian couple find their upgraded seats. No rush, no tension, just care. Nia looked down at her phone. Hashtag Equal Skies was trending. Again. She smiled. Not the smile of a victor, but of someone who had turned pain into blueprint. And before she closed her screen, she typed one final message on a social post shared with her millions of followers. Justice isn't revenge. It's designing a world where that injustice can't happen again. If you've faced bias, share your story. If you believe in change, share this one. We're just getting started.